Hey everybody, this is AriesJJ79 from Instagram. Today I'm going to be showing you how I personally do the Staggered Fuse Clapton. Now, the Staggered Fuse Clapton was originally designed by Squidude, and there's a build video out there by Twisted Messes. I highly recommend that you go out and watch it if you have the time. He has a lot of equipment where he's able to do the close-ups and the extreme macros that I just don't have the capabilities of doing. But his method of creation and my methods vary slightly based on tools available. Now, the premise behind the Staggered Fuse Clapton is, instead of going with a normal Clapton where you have a core wire surrounded by a single smaller gauge wire, with Staggered Fuse Clapton, you're going to start off with that same premise, but instead of using a single Claptoning wire, you're going to use a parallel Claptoning wire. So you're using two wires to Clapton around your core. Afterwards, you're going to unravel one of the cores, which that wire will no longer be usable, which leaves you with a core with a very precisely spaced gapping in your Clapton. Then you'll take that wire, wrap it in half, or as some choose, you cut it in half to come out with two equal lengths, and you'll fuse those together with your same gauge Clapton wire. In my case, I use 36, and you'll Clapton it and fuse it into the spaces left by the unraveled portion. Now, what this does is it creates just phenomenal juice channels. Given that you've got all these little nooks and crannies for the juice to sit in, it makes the flavor pop. The cloud production's on par too. Now, my personal go-to is a 26-36 fused Clapton. Today I'll be showing you a 24-36 with a slight variation. I don't have a lower quality 36 like I normally do, so today I'll be using a 32 as my spacing wire. I recommend using a lower quality or less expensive wire for your throwaway. After all, you're not going to be able to use this again. So why go through your expensive wire when you don't have to? Now, as far as flavor production goes, like I said, the flavor is just great. Cloud production is pretty good. I've got a 26-36 Staggered Fuse Clapton in my Twisted Messes RDA. Your RDA is going to play a very important role, because with your dual core and your fusing of the Claptons, it's going to make for a pretty sizable wire. So you're going to have the post holes that can stand up to that. Like I said, I'm going to be using my Twisted Messes, and I'm also going to be using a brand new RDA on the market called the .com. You can learn more about the .com from .com Vapors. It boasts a lot of the same features that the Twisted Messes does, and that they both have 3mm post holes. The only difference is the Twisted Messes has 4 posts, whereas the .com only has 3. Either one are perfect. I switch between them. Matter of fact, I'm running 2 of them right now, one in each one. This one is my 26-36, and as you can see, the cloud production is just wonderful on them. This is the replica of what I'm going to be building today. It is a 24 gauge G-plat, I'm sorry, not a 24 gauge, a 26 gauge G-plat wire core with a 36 gauge Twisted Messes Nichrome 80. I really enjoy Twisted Messes wire. It's high quality. It's just, it's great. I can't rave on it enough. I really can't. That's what I have in this RDA. I'm running the G-Plat series with the Twisted Messes 36. Let's take a look at the cloud production on it. Now, you're not going to want to run this build on a standard mech mod. You're going to want to run it on a mod with 2 good quality batteries, be it a parallel build, unregulated box, or a regulated, something like the Sigeli 150 or the IPv3, IPv4, something along those lines. The batteries I'm using are sub-ohm cells. They are 35 amp batteries, which gives me more than enough headway to push these low ohm builds. The wattage that are the voltage that I go by is I try to get it as close to 4.1 as possible. Right now I'm pushing right at 100 watts on the Staggered 150, and it comes out to right at 4.1 volts. Man, that flavor is just off the chain. So let's go ahead and dive on down and let's see how it's done. Okay, so the tools that we'll be using today are a screwdriver to wrap your coil around. Today I'll be using a 2.4 millimeter screwdriver. You're going to need your core wire. I'll be using 26 gauge G-plat wire. Feel free to use nichrome 80 or Canthal. I've just found that nichrome 80 or G-plat works best for me. You're going to need an ohm meter to make sure that your build is safe. Always use an ohm meter. A good pair of quality snips, a pair of needle nose pliers, some ceramic tweezers to help you get the hot spots out. I always use ceramic tweezers in every build that I have. Your Claptoning wire, I'll be using 36 gauge nichrome 80 from Twisted Messes. Again, I can't rave enough about this stuff. It is just so easy to work with. And then your less expensive throwaway wire. Like I said, normally I would use 36 gauge throwaway wire, but I don't have 36 gauge right now, so I'll be using 32 gauge, which will throw off my spacing a little bit, but it's not going to be too big of a difference. Also, you're going to need to have a quality RDA with good sized post holes. Now, I'll be throwing it into the .com RDA today with 3 millimeter post holes. As you can see, like I said previously, that it's got a 3-post design, but the way that I build mine, it's going to be more than adequate to fit this build into. So let's go ahead and dive on down and let's get it done. Okay, so what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to cut off a pre-measured length of your core wire. Like I said, I'm using 26 gauge G-plat. I've cut off just right around 2 feet of wire, and of course it's going to come off starting really springy and warped up, but we're going to fix that by straightening it out. Most of you already know that just to straighten it out, you're just going to put one end in the chuck of a drill, hold the other end very taut with a pair of needle nose pliers or flat nose pliers, just whatever you have handy, and give it a couple spins of the drill. Just run your fingers down it so it doesn't kink up. There we go, nice and pretty. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on. Okay, now that we've got our wire straightened, we're going to take our 2 Claptoning wires. Like I said, I'm using 36 gauge for my Clapton keeper, and I'm using 32 gauge as my throwaway. Now what you're going to want to do is have them separated to where one goes on each side of your body. Now you're going to want to keep these taut. The way Twisted Messes suggests it is to pull out a good length of wire, keeping it nice and stretched, not to the point of breaking it, but to the point where it straightens it. Now I have these wire dispensers that I picked up from J-Wraps, and they work great for straightening the wire as I'm using it. But what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to take them and just kind of twist them together here at the ends, and that's going to create a nice little grip for the drill to catch hold of. Now my particular drill doesn't have spacing between its chucks, so what I do is I wrap mine gently around the edge, around the end, with a little crook in it to give the drill something to catch onto. Now, you're not going to get this perfect when you're first starting off and you're Claptoning, and that's no big deal. It's going to straighten out as you move along. But you're going to want this nice and centered. There we go. Get it in there good and tight. And it's just a matter of keeping them nice and together while going through and Claptoning them without having any noticeable gaps or overlay. Now, if you do happen to get some overlay, if it's in the middle of the wire, you're going to need to just start over. If it's at the beginning, no big deal. You can use what's left. or you can alternately just unwind it and start over again from where the error occurred. So I'm going to go ahead and get this Claptoned up. Okay, so I've got that Claptoned up now. Now, if you can, I'm not sure if my camera can pick this up, but if it can, what you'll see is that I stopped about a centimeter away from the end, and I left my throwaway wire cut off about an inch, inch and a half, and I cut my keeper wire pretty short to the core. Now what that's going to do is that's going to give me something to grip onto to start unraveling this throwaway wire, just to kind of get it started and get it ready to go. What we're going to do is take it out of the chuck. Always snip off your dead end. I've learned that it just keeps it from getting hung up on anything that you're working around and causing problems. You're going to want to take your opposite end. Now we're going to do a little bit of snip and clip here. Let's get a nice little chunk of the throwaway wire worked up. Now, Twisted Messes uses a anvil with a fish swivel, which in my opinion would be fantastic. It would make my life so much easier. I don't have a vice grip with a fish swivel, so what I use is just the stand from a soldering iron, and that's going to brace my wire as I'm pulling it. Now, you can also use a second person to just kind of hold it right there where you're unraveling to keep it from just going haywire on you as you're pulling this off. What you're going to find is that as this unravels, it's going to get weak, and there's a chance that it may break off right there at the chuck. If that happens, it's no big deal. Just put it back in and just keep going. So let's get this put in there. Try to get it as centered as you can in that chuck. It's going to make your life so much easier. And then to start off with, just either with a pair of pliers or if you have a strong enough grip, just grab a hold of that throwaway wire and just slowly start unraveling it. See, and there it goes. Mine's going ahead and starting to break off. And that's going to come from using that 36 gauge, which is going to put a lot more strain on that 26 G-plat. So what we're going to do is we're just going to snip off that little part that it was breaking off. Put that back in the chuck. And I'm going to go ahead and brace it with my stand. Grab it with the pliers and just keep going. Now, as you can see, I'm putting constant pressure on this to get this unwound. At first, you're going to want to start slow until you get used to it. But after a while, you'll get the feel of it, and you'll just be able to keep going with it. Every so often, you're going to need to wrap some of that wire up, because you've got a lot of wire to unravel here. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this off while I unspool the rest of this ravel. And we'll come back to it, and I'll show you macro shots what it's going to look like after I've got it unraveled.
Now what you're going to end up with is some nicely spaced canthal or core wire, just like this. As you can see, it's nice and evenly gapped as I go down the wire. Now my gapping is a little bit bigger. Like I said, I was having to use a larger gauge 32 as my throwaway. But when you're using equal gauges, that gapping is going to be just magnificently perfect. You're going to want to be careful with this, or else what's going to happen is you're going to throw off your spacing, and it's going to make fusing it that much more difficult. Just kind of make sure and go over your wire. Make sure that it's nicely gapped, just like this. If it's not, you're going to need to start over and run it again. It's going to take you a little while to get this down. It took me probably a good 5, 10, 15 different runs to get it to where I can work with it first starting off. Now I've got to the point where I can run it just in a matter of a couple minutes. It's no big deal.
Okay, so we've got our gapped Clapton wire here now. Now I started off with 2 foot and I ended up with about 1.5 feet. I wish I could have gotten it all, but some of it broke off while I was unraveling it, and that's an unfortunate side effect at times. But what you're going to want to do is, me personally, I fold mine in half, and I found that it kinks up less if you do that. Now, if you're more the type to cut, then by all means, go ahead and cut. I'm just going to fold mine in half, get it nice and tight down here at the end, and use my pliers to go ahead and pinch that as close as I can to where I have a nice parallel series. And what I do is I take my original Clapton wire, my 36 gauge, and if I could stop dropping it. Well, I've got butterfingers today. And because of that, I got a couple kinks in there. So let's get this all uncut. There we go. And we're going to start wrapping it around the very tip. Again, if you have a drill that's got spaces in the chuck, you don't have to do your initial wraps on the wire. You can just stick it in your chuck and then put it into the gapping to catch hold. Mine won't do that, unfortunately, so I have to work with it a different way. Let's undo the chuck a little bit. There we go. We're just going to seat it nice and firmly in the middle of the chuck. Tighten that up. Now, I'm going to be honest, this is going to take some immaculate eyesight, because what you're having to do when you're first starting off is getting it to where you're in that gapping. Go slow at first. I can't stress that enough. Go slow. Once you find the right angle, it'll start running itself and basically wrapping itself. Just kind of start slow until you get it into that gapping. There we go. And once you have it in that gapping, like I said, it'll wrap itself. Just keep going from there, and if you mess up, if it starts skipping out on you, back it off a little bit, and then just start over, because you're going to want this as flaw-free as possible to prevent hot spotting. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the video right here. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. Okay, so I've got that all wrapped up. It only took me just a matter of a couple seconds to get it. Like I said, start slow until you get used to this. Once you get it down to an art, you'll be able to fly through it. As you can see, I've got some twists and some kinks in this. Now, the cool thing about this wire is it's really, really easy to unravel. All you'll need to do is just take you a pair of pliers. Let me zoom my camera out just a touch. There we go. And slowly just kind of unravel while keeping tight pressure on this. Just go slow. I can't stress that enough. Go slow. And just every so often, just move up until you can get all those little twists and turns out. There we go. You're going to want this as straight as possible. Let me go ahead and cut it off here, and I'll get you some macro shots as to the finished product before we actually start wrapping it up for a coil.
Okay, so what you're going to end up with is this nice fishboning effect where it fuses together. Let's see if I can get better focus on this. And we're going to go all the way down. And you can see how it's gone through and filled in those gaps really, really nicely. That's the finished effect that you want. Now, as you can see, I've got a couple flaws in there where the gapping got a little bit off and I missed it. Points that I just couldn't quite catch and didn't go back and unravel. That's going to happen until you get used to this. Just kind of expect it, and until you get it perfected, just realize that we're all human. We're going to make mistakes. So let me get back out, and we'll go ahead and wrap this up into a coil.
Okay, so we ended up with about 10 inches worth of wire to work with. Now, if you're this far into coil building, you obviously know how to wrap your coil. We're going to go ahead and go with 6 wraps on these. So let's see, this one. Now, this wire is pretty stiff, so you're going to want to get this kind of perfect off the start. If it starts twisting up on you, then use your pliers to get the warp out. Let's see, there's 3. See, right there is wanting to twist. So let's go ahead and, there we go. That's 5 and 6. Okay, now what I like to do is I like to put a little kink right down here in the middle, right at the edge of the of that last leg. And what that does is that takes a little bit of the strain off the coil whenever you go to adjust it. And I cut mine fairly short, so it's less cutting that I have to do, but I've got it to where I know pretty much with these RDAs exactly how much room I have to work with. And see, that leg's a little crooked there too, so let's straighten that out. There we go. The straighter you can get these in your post holes, the better off you are. So we're going to go ahead and set that one down for a second. Let's go ahead and wrap our second coil. Let's see, that's 1. Oops. 2, 3, and 6. Okay, again, we're going to throw that kink down here, the little L leg, and snip it off right there at the end. And let's go ahead and get these installed. Okay, we ran into a little issue when I went to install these in the posts. Tightened it down a little bit too much and ended up snapping one of the leads, so I had to rewrap. Luckily, I had enough left over where I was able to get the the replacement coil made. So, as always, we're going to go through, center up our coils. And with these, you're going to want to angle them just a little bit to make sure that you have plenty of clearance and room for your cotton away from your top cap. So let's see how these are firing. That's pretty quick and they're pretty even. Just do a little bit of tweaking on them. Normally you have to work with these a little bit. Because of the nature of the coil, they're going to short out in certain areas and cause little hot spots. Seems like I've pulled aces on this one and not really getting any hot spots on it. That one's heating up a little quick. Okay, there we go. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and let this cool down, and then we'll come back and cotton it up, juice it up, ohm it out, and see how she bakes. Okay, so she's had a chance to cool off, so we're going to go ahead and cotton her up. Now, my cotton of choice is organic Japanese. Obviously, use what you're most comfortable with. Me, I just split mine right down the middle and roll mine up. That way I get that nice uniform exterior cotton going outwards towards the coil. Pop it through, make sure it's nice and tight. You don't want this overly tight, but you don't want it real loose either, simply for the fact of you don't want to choke off your coil, but you also don't want hot spots getting in there. Come on. There we go. Okay,
So she's all nice and wicked up. Let's go ahead and snip this off. Now, this .com RDA has really deep juice well. I mean, it's 7.6 millimeter juice well, something like that. So we're going to leave these legs considerably longer than what we normally would for most RDAs, just to be able to reach the bottom. Let's see. Me and my pink scissors. Snip that off. Okay, and then we're going to take our little screwdriver, and all we're going to do is just make sure that it goes down and just touches that well, touches the bottom of the well. You don't want to have your cotton up underneath your coil. You want all the airflow under your coil that you can get. That just helps produce that better vape and helps keep the wicking up. There we go. Now we got that nice and cottoned up. Here, my nice little chihuahua, or not so nice little chihuahua in the background. So let's see what she elms out to now that we've adjusted it. Okay, and as you can see, we've come out, ended up with a 0.14, which is perfectly acceptable in my range. That's actually I like mine anywhere from a 0.11 to a 0.16. Now, obviously if you're going to go single coil, you're going to end up with about a 0.28, 0.30, somewhere in that range. Let's go ahead and get her put on this SP box mod. I'm going to put links to the .com RDA, the Twisted Messes RDA and wire, and the SP Customs Vapor for this box mod. I'm going to put links to all of them and give them the shout out and the props that they deserve. All of them are quality products. I love them. So let's juice it up. What's nice about this .com, like I said, is that deep juice well. So you really don't have fear of flooding it too terribly much. I can actually fit with the cap on. I can fit 3 30 mil dropper fulls down inside the juice well. Now, I don't mean a full 30 mil bottle. I'm talking about the dropper from a 30 mil bottle. I can fit 3 full ones of those down into the well without it dripping out. And I love that about these things. Let's see how she's doing. As you can see, she's hitting pretty good. Excuse me. Okay, so we're hitting right at 4.1, give or take, voltage. And she's definitely keeping up on the wicking. Let's throw a little bit more on there. I like to break my cotton in gradually. It just helps prolong it a little bit longer. Okay, there we go. So let's pause this and take it back out to FaceTime and go from there. Okay, so we've got it all wet up, wired up, the whole 9 yards. I got it in my .com RDA, like I said, on my SP custom box. Thomas, thank you. I love my box. This, like I said before, this build will work perfectly in a Twisted Messes RDA or the .com. Make sure that your post holes going into this are going to be big enough to handle these bars, especially if you're going with a dual coil design. If you have a 3-post, your center post has got to be pretty beefy. If you're on a 4-post system like the .com, like the Twisted Messes or like the Mutation X V4, you shouldn't have too much issue. I know you won't with the Twisted Messes. The Mutation X V4, you may have to finagle it a little bit to get it to fit. Let's see how she vapes. Ah, that is delicious. Yeah, flavor's on point. Cloud production is phenomenal. I look forward to doing these videos more and more often. I hope y'all enjoyed. Vape on, stay off the stinkies, enjoy life. Have a nice night, y'all.